The first time humans left their solar system, they were not sure what awaited them. For centuries, people had looked up at the stars with wonder, imagining what might be out there. Stories filled books, films, and conversations, but nothing could have prepared them for the reality. Ships were built carefully, tested for years, and finally launched with crews who had trained for the unimaginable. They were explorers, diplomats, scientists, and ordinary people given extraordinary responsibility. The mission was not only to explore space, but to make contact with civilizations beyond Earth. Nobody really knew if life outside their planet existed, let alone organized governments that spanned the stars. When the fleet approached the designated meeting point, the first signs of alien presence became visible. The vast space around them shimmered with structures, unlike anything humans had imagined. Gigantic stations floated silently, each with shapes that seemed to defy human understanding. Curved surfaces, glowing panels, and strange symbols decorated these enormous constructs. They were not just space stations. They were cities in orbit, housing creatures who had mastered technologies humanity had only dreamed about. The size of the structures made the Earthships seem tiny, almost fragile, like toys drifting toward an immense, silent ocean dot inside the human command ship. The crew felt a mix of excitement and fear. They had studied every possible scenario, prepared for negotiations, and trained in alien etiquette as best as they could. Yet nothing could erase the tension of actually being here, surrounded by beings who had watched civilizations rise and fall across countless star systems. Every crew member understood that their first impression could change humanity's future. If they made a mistake, it could end badly, not just for the crew, but for the entire species. And yet, amid the fear, there was a deep sense of pride. Humans had come a long way. They had survived wars, environmental disasters, and countless challenges on their own planet. They were about to face the universe, and this was their moment to prove that they could be more than just Earthlings. As the ships moved closer, the Council appeared for the first time. Unlike humans, they did not move in predictable ways. Some glided without engines, others seemed to float effortlessly, and a few simply shimmered, changing their shape as they passed through space. Each delegation had its own unique form, reflecting thousands of years of evolution and culture. The humans were fascinated, observing every detail carefully. They noticed that, despite the differences, all beings carried themselves with confidence. None of them seemed surprised, worried, or intimidated. They had seen countless new civilizations appear and disappear. Humans, for the first time, were on the stage of a history much larger than their own. The human ships were scanned by the Council, and the crew realized how small they actually were in comparison. The Council's sensors were able to read the ship's internal layouts, the crew's vital signs, and even subtle emotional cues. Humans tried to remain calm, but their hearts raced. It was difficult to appear confident when you knew every nervous glance and every hesitation could be seen by beings who were thousands of years ahead in technology and understanding. Still, they had trained for this, and they had to show that humanity was capable. Even if untested. When the human delegation finally docked, they were escorted into a chamber that was beyond anything they had imagined. The room was massive, stretching farther than the eye could see. Lights floated in the air, not attached to anything, illuminating everything evenly. Sounds echoed strangely, and the air seemed alive with a faint energy. Hundreds of representatives from countless star systems were present, each watching the humans with interest. The humans felt small, but they were not invisible. Every movement, every word, and even the way they stood was being observed, analyzed, and judged. The human leader stepped forward. She carried herself with quiet confidence, aware of the weight of responsibility she bore. The crew followed her lead, standing tall, despite the anxiety bubbling under their calm exterior. They had one chance to make a first impression, and they could not afford to fail. The council watched in silence, their attention absolute. For a moment, it seemed like time had stopped. Humans had never experienced anything like this. It was more than fear or excitement. It was awe, combined with a deep understanding that this moment could define the future of their species. As the meeting began, the humans realized something important. These beings did not see the world the way humans did. They did not communicate with voices and gestures alone. There were subtle energies, unspoken intentions, and signals that humans could barely comprehend. Every movement mattered. The humans had studied this, prepared, and practiced, but the reality was far more complex than any simulation or training. They had to rely on their instincts as much as their knowledge. They had to be both careful and brave at the same time. The first interactions were formal, cautious, but polite. Humans answered questions about their history, their planet, and their species. The council listened, sometimes asking for clarification, sometimes observing silently. There was an underlying tension in the room, a feeling that this was not just a meeting, it was a test. Every word humans spoke could influence how they were seen, as a species worth respect, a species to ignore, or worse, a species to dominate. The humans knew that the galaxy had countless civilizations, many of which had grown powerful by conquering weaker worlds. They could not assume goodwill. They had to show strength, intelligence, and dignity. For hours, the discussions continued. Humans spoke about their achievements and challenges, their history of exploration, science, and culture. They described their struggles, but also their ability to learn, adapt, and grow. The council listened, occasionally exchanging glances among themselves. Humans realized that they were being measured not just for what they had accomplished, but for the potential they represented. The council could sense determination, resilience, and ingenuity, all qualities that humans had in abundance, though tempered by inexperience. This realization gave them confidence, but also reminded them of the stakes. Any misstep could cost them credibility and respect. By the end of the first day, the humans had made a cautious but positive impression. They were seen as curious, intelligent, and capable of standing up for themselves, even if they were new to the galaxy. The council had not yet made their formal demand, but the humans could sense it was coming. They had to be ready. They had to prepare not just their words, but their minds, for what would be asked. And yet, even in this moment of tension, the humans felt a deep pride. They were here, in the heart of the galaxy, representing all of humanity. They were not just explorers or diplomats. They were the voice of a species that had come a long way and was ready to face whatever challenge the universe placed before it at night. After the formal meetings, the humans gathered quietly in their chambers. They reflected on the day, sharing observations, feelings, and thoughts. Some were nervous, others excited, but all felt a sense of unity and purpose. They understood that their mission was more than just diplomacy. It was about survival, respect, and proving that humanity could hold its own among the stars. The stars outside their windows looked different than they ever had on Earth, closer, sharper, more alive. They were reminders of the vastness of the universe and of the extraordinary journey humanity had begun. This was only the beginning. The humans had arrived, and they had been seen. The galaxy was watching, and they had already made an impression. But they knew the real test was yet to come. The council would speak, and when it did, humanity would have to respond in a way that no one expected. The stakes were immense, but so was the opportunity. They were not just representing themselves. They were representing every human who had ever dreamed of reaching the stars. And that, more than anything else, gave them the courage to face the unknown. The following morning, the human delegation returned to the council chamber, their nerves taut but controlled. They had spent the night reviewing every possible scenario, practicing responses, and reminding themselves to stay calm. Even though they had made a positive impression the day before, everyone understood that nothing in the galaxy came without expectations. The Council had its own ways, rules, and methods, and humans were still learning how to navigate them. The stakes were higher than anyone on Earth could imagine. As the humans entered the chamber, the air seemed heavier than before. The room was vast, stretching farther than they could see, filled with representatives from hundreds of worlds. Some floated, others glided, and a few shimmered as if they were not entirely solid. All of them were watching intently, their eyes, or the equivalents of eyes, trained on the human delegation. The humans felt the weight of countless generations of expectation pressing down on them. Every alien there had witnessed civilizations rise and fall, conquer and be conquered. Now, the humans were in their view, tiny yet defiant. And the moment of truth was about to arrive. The Council's leader, a being taller than any human had ever seen, with a translucent body that seemed to ripple with inner light, addressed the delegation. Its voice, deep and resonant, vibrated through the chamber in a way that humans could feel as much as hear. "You have arrived," it said. "Your species has been observed for some time. You have shown curiosity, intelligence, and courage. But there is one matter that cannot be overlooked. Your world, though young, now enters the larger order of the galaxy. Every new civilization is expected to acknowledge this order. Every new species must pay tribute, as recognition of their place among the stars." The words were clear, precise, and devoid of emotion. Tribute. That was the term the humans had feared in their training exercises. In the galaxy, tribute was not just a gift, it was a symbol of submission, a reminder that the Council's reach and authority extended across star systems. Humans were expected to offer something valuable, resources, technology, or rare artifacts. Anything less would be seen as defiance, and defiance in the wrong place could lead to disastrous consequences. The human delegation listened carefully, standing with measured composure. They were not frightened, but they were acutely aware of the implications. To refuse the demand outright could spark conflict. To comply fully might strip them of dignity and autonomy. They were on unfamiliar ground, facing beings who had mastered the art of patience and intimidation over centuries. Every movement, every word mattered. One of the alien delegates, with a form resembling intertwined ribbons of light, floated closer and repeated the demand in a tone that seemed almost playful. "The tribute must be given. We require recognition, acknowledgement, a token of your obedience. What will you offer, humans?" Humans looked at each other quietly. Inside the delegation, discussions whispered without words, a silent communication built from training and instinct. They had expected this moment, but facing it in reality was different. The humans understood that this was not merely a negotiation. It was a test of character, courage, and the very essence of their species. The Council waited patiently, giving the humans time to respond. The silence in the chamber was heavy, almost tactile. It pressed against the humans, but they resisted letting fear dictate their actions. Instead, they focused on what they knew about themselves. Humanity had survived countless challenges on Earth: wars, natural disasters, plagues, and political turmoil. They had learned to adapt, to stand up when needed, to find solutions when others gave up. The delegation knew they could not simply give in. They had to represent the spirit of an entire species. After what seemed like an eternity, the human leader stepped forward slightly. Her posture was calm, her expression composed, but there was a fire in her eyes. She spoke clearly, deliberately, choosing her words with care. "We understand your request. We understand the history and the expectations of the galaxy. But our species does not exist to serve others. We do not give our strength, our knowledge, or our resources simply to please. We respect others, but we do not bow to intimidation. A ripple passed through the chamber. Some aliens tilted their heads, trying to interpret the human words, while others murmured to one another in languages the humans could not understand. The council had not expected such directness. Most civilizations had responded with immediate compliance, offering what was demanded, and sometimes more. Humans, however, were neither compliant nor afraid. They were claiming space for themselves, asserting their presence without aggression. The council's leader responded, its tone carefully measured. "You misunderstand the nature of this request. Tribute is not optional. It is a symbol of understanding and cooperation. To refuse is to declare your unwillingness to join the Galactic Order. Do you not wish for peace, humans?" The humans paused. They understood the weight of these words. The council had not threatened them directly, but the implication was clear. Refusal could carry consequences that humans had only speculated about. Yet, even in this moment of pressure, the human delegation felt a sense of clarity. Their choice would define humanity's place in the galaxy. They could either comply and risk being seen as weak, or they could stand firm and risk confrontation. And standing firm had always been part of their history. In the quiet that followed, a member of the human delegation spoke softly, not to the council, but to the team beside her. "We must respond with what we are, not what they expect us to be. One word, one clear message. Nothing more. No hesitation, no compromise. The universe must understand who we are." The others nodded subtly. They understood instinctively. Years of training, research, and reflection had led them to this moment. They were not just individuals. They were representatives of all humanity. The words they chose would echo beyond the chamber, beyond this star system, and perhaps through generations. The council, sensing the deliberation, waited patiently. Time seemed suspended. The human leader took a slow, deliberate breath, focusing on the unity and strength of the species she represented. She thought about Earth, its oceans, mountains, deserts, cities, and people. She thought about the countless humans who had dreamed of the stars but never reached them. And then she found the word dot. It was simple. It was clear. It carried centuries of resilience, survival, and unshakable resolve. It was not a threat, nor was it a plea. It was an assertion, a declaration that humans would not be underestimated. She stepped forward, projected her voice as clearly as possible, and said it. The word hung in the chamber, floating in the silence. For a moment, nothing happened. The council and the alien delegates stared, unblinking. Some shifted uneasily, trying to comprehend what they had just heard. Others exchanged subtle glances, communicating through methods humans could not decipher. The humans themselves felt the weight of the word they had spoken. It was more than an answer. It was a statement of identity, a promise, and a challenge all at once. Whispers began to ripple through the council chamber. Delegates murmured in their own languages, some audibly, some not. The council leader paused, as if reconsidering everything they had assumed about humanity. The simple one-word response had changed the dynamic in ways they had not anticipated. This tiny young species from a small blue planet had spoken with clarity and courage, challenging centuries of precedent in a single moment. The humans stood silently, calm but alert. They had no idea how the council would ultimately respond, but they had made their choice. They had asserted their presence and their dignity. And in doing so, they had shown that humanity was a species to be counted, not dismissed. By the end of the encounter, the atmosphere in the chamber had shifted. The aliens, who had expected fear or submission, now faced a species that refused to be intimidated. The humans were no longer just new arrivals. They were a force that could not be ignored. As the delegation returned to their ship that evening, they reflected on the moment and realized that they had not only survived the encounter, they had changed it. The galaxy had seen humanity, and humanity had spoken. And though the council's full response would come later, The human delegation understood one thing clearly. They had made the first mark. The first signal that humans would not follow blindly, that they would not be underestimated, and that when the universe demanded respect, they were ready to answer. After the tense encounter with the Council, the human delegation returned to their ship in a quiet but focused mood. The one-word response they had given still resonated in their minds. It was not just a word. It was a statement, a declaration of who humanity was, and they could feel the weight of its significance. The silence of the ship's corridors felt different now. It was heavy with anticipation, as if even the walls understood the importance of what had just occurred. The crew gathered in the main hall to discuss what had just happened and to plan the next steps. Everyone was silent for a moment, each lost in their own thoughts. Some replayed the encounter in their minds, remembering the alien delegates' strange shapes and the glowing chambers of the Council. Others thought about the ripple of reaction they had sensed when the word was spoken. There had been surprise, confusion, even disbelief. But most importantly, there had been recognition. The humans had claimed their space in the galaxy in a way that words alone could not fully describe. The human leader spoke first, her voice calm but resolute. "We have made our statement." That word represents every human, past and present. It carries our history, our struggles, and our willingness to survive. But we must also understand what comes next. The Council will respond, and we must be ready for any reaction. They may test us further, and we cannot assume that they will accept our stance without challenge. The team nodded. They understood the gravity of the situation. Humanity was new to this stage, and the galaxy was full of civilizations that had lived and thrived for thousands, even millions of years. Some might see their response as bold. Others might see it as foolish. But humans had never been ones to shy away from challenges, and this was no different. In the hours that followed, the delegation worked tirelessly. They analyzed the Council's reactions, trying to understand the subtle cues they had observed. The Council's delegates communicated in ways that humans could barely interpret through light, motion, sound, and other means that did not fit human perception. Every flicker, every shift of color or form could carry meaning. The humans debated, theorized, and prepared. They had to understand not just the Council's words, but their intentions. Because the difference between the two could be the difference between survival and conflict. While they worked, the human leader reminded everyone of an important truth. Humans had always succeeded when they worked together, when they relied on their intelligence, creativity, and resilience. They had overcome impossible odds on Earth, from natural disasters to wars, from political turmoil to global crisis. That same spirit had brought them here, to the stars, and it would guide them in this moment as well. They could not rely on fear or submission. They had to rely on who they were as a species. The night passed without rest. The crew rotated shifts, some monitoring communications, others running simulations, and a few reviewing historical records of human diplomacy. They studied every possible outcome, every possible reaction, and every strategy for response. Even though they did not yet know exactly how the Council would act, they understood one thing clearly. They could not be unprepared. In the galaxy, hesitation or weakness could be exploited quickly, and humans were determined not to give anyone that advantage. As the next day dawned, the delegation gathered again in the observation chamber of their ship. From there, they could see the Council's stations, enormous structures stretching beyond the human eye. The light from distant stars reflected off their surfaces, creating a shifting mosaic of color and shadow. To the humans, the sight was breathtaking, but it also reminded them of the stakes. They were facing civilizations far older and more advanced than their own. And yet, they felt something unique: confidence. They had spoken their truth, and now they were ready to meet whatever response the galaxy might offer. Finally, a message arrived from the council. Unlike before, it was brief and formal. Your response has been noted. You will have the opportunity to clarify your intentions. Be prepared for discussion. The message was polite, almost neutral, but the humans could sense a tension beneath the words. The council had not dismissed them, nor had it threatened them directly. But there was clearly more to come. The humans understood that the next encounter would be crucial. It was not just about words now. It was about presence, understanding, and the strength of their collective resolve. The delegation spent the hours before the meeting preparing. They rehearsed answers, studied the possible ways the council might challenge them, and reinforced the unity of the team. They reminded themselves that humanity's greatest strength lay not in technology or power alone, but in creativity, adaptability, and determination. Even if the council tested them with something beyond comprehension, humans would find a way to respond. That was the nature of their species. When the delegation returned to the council chamber, the atmosphere was different. There was still curiosity, still observation, but also a sense of anticipation from the aliens. They had not expected humans to respond in the way they had, and now they were waiting to see what would come next. The humans stepped forward, careful, deliberate, and confident. They were small compared to the vast chamber and the alien delegates, but they carried with them something no technology could measure, the will of an entire species. The council's leader addressed them again, this time with a tone that suggested both caution and interest. Your words were unexpected. You had shown defiance, but also clarity. You have not offered tribute, nor have you bowed to expectation. Explain your intentions, humans. Why should your species be regarded as equal, worthy of presence among the stars? The human leader paused, considering the question carefully. She could sense the weight behind it. This was not just about negotiation. It was about perception. If they could articulate humanity's values, their history, and their potential, they could change how the council and perhaps the galaxy viewed them. She took a deep breath and began to speak, not just as a representative of the delegation, but as a voice of all humanity. We do not seek dominance, nor do we seek subjugation. Humanity has survived against great odds, not because we followed others blindly, but because we learned, adapted, and worked together. Our history is one of struggle, innovation, and resilience. We honor life, curiosity, and exploration. To offer tribute as a symbol of submission would not reflect who we are. But to stand here and assert our presence, to speak honestly and act with respect and dignity, is exactly what we must do as a species entering a larger universe. Our intentions are clear: to exist, to learn, to grow, and to contribute. A murmur spread through the chamber. The humans could sense the council delegates shifting, exchanging subtle signals and observations. The words were being processed, analyzed, and debated. Some of the delegates seemed impressed, others uncertain, but none dismissed the humans outright. For the first time, the humans felt that they were being regarded not merely as newcomers, but as a species with potential and presence. The council leader responded, its tone measured, almost curious. You speak of dignity and intent, yet the question remains: will you respect the structures of this galaxy? Will you abide by the rules, even if they are unfamiliar? Your one-word statement challenged expectations. How can we trust that it was not merely defiance? The human leader met its gaze steadily. Trust is built through action, not fear or submission. We will abide by principles of fairness, respect, and cooperation. We will engage with others honestly and openly. But we will not compromise the integrity of who we are. Our word was not defiance for the sake of challenge. It was clarity. It was truth. We will act in accordance with our values, and in doing so, we ask that others do the same. The chamber fell silent. The aliens considered these words, their forms still and focused. The humans could feel the tension, but also the shift. The council had not resolved its decision, but the dynamic had changed. Humans were no longer seen as fragile, inexperienced, or unimportant. They were being weighed as a species with character, courage, and potential. After what felt like hours, but was only minutes, the council leader spoke again. "We will observe your actions carefully. The galaxy is vast, and history is long. Humans, your species has declared itself clearly. We will watch and see if your actions match your words. Be prepared, for the coming days will test not only your presence, but your principles." The human delegation returned to their ship, exhausted but invigorated. They had survived the second encounter and had maintained their dignity and voice. They had not bowed, nor had they faltered. The crew felt a renewed sense of purpose. They understood that the galaxy was vast and filled with challenges. But humans had already shown that they could face the unknown with courage and clarity. That night, as the ship drifted silently through space, the crew looked out at the stars. They saw the council's massive stations, shimmering and alive, and they thought about the long road ahead. The humans had made their stance clear, but this was only the beginning. They would face tests, challenges, and judgments unlike anything they had experienced on Earth. Yet they felt confident, because they had each other, and they had the unyielding spirit of their species. They realized something profound. Being new in the galaxy did not mean being weak. Humanity's strength lay not in size, or power, or tech. The moment of truth had finally arrived. The human delegation returned to the council chamber, knowing that this meeting would define not only their place in the galaxy, but also how humans would be seen for generations to come. The air inside the chamber was charged, almost alive, and every alien delegate seemed to sense the significance of what was about to happen. The humans could feel the tension pressing against them, but they were prepared. They had rehearsed, discussed, and reflected on this moment countless times. Now it was time to act. The council had arranged the chamber differently this time. The seats and floating platforms of the alien delegates seemed to shift, almost as if the room itself was observing the humans, waiting to see what they would do. The glowing symbols that hovered in the air appeared brighter, more intense, reflecting the focus of countless minds on this one small delegation from a distant blue planet. Despite the grandeur and the overwhelming presence of centuries-old civilizations, the humans walked forward confidently, their steps measured and steady. The council leader, towering and radiant, addressed them immediately. Its voice was calm, but carried a weight that made every human feel the gravity of the moment. "You have spoken before. You have declared your intentions. But declarations alone are not enough in this galaxy. Words must match action. Demonstrate, if you dare, the essence of your species." The humans understood instantly what was being asked. The council did not want negotiation or flattery. It wanted clarity, a simple demonstration of humanity's identity, its spirit, and its courage. And in that clarity, the humans had already prepared a single, definitive response, a one-word answer that would carry centuries of resilience, defiance, and determination in its meaning. They knew that this word would shock the galaxy, for it was not just a reply. It was a statement of existence. The delegation paused. The humans did not speak immediately. They allowed the silence to stretch, letting the chamber feel the weight of anticipation. Every alien delegate was watching, some leaning closer, some exchanging glances with others in their own incomprehensible ways. The humans could feel their attention, the way it pressed like gravity against them. And then, with deliberate calm, the human leader stepped forward. Her voice cut through the charged silence, steady and resonant. She said the word clearly, with conviction, so that it echoed throughout the chamber and beyond the human ships. The word was simple, yet powerful. containing within it the essence of every struggle humanity had ever faced, every challenge they had overcome, every time they had refused to bow in the face of fear. It was not a threat, nor was it a plea. It was the unmistakable sound of humanity asserting itself. The reaction was immediate. The chamber froze. For a heartbeat, the galaxy seemed to hold its breath. Alien delegates paused mid-motion. Some tilted in surprise, others shimmered erratically, as if the word had disrupted their perception of reality. Even the council leader seemed to hesitate, its form rippling in a way that suggested both shock and curiosity. This was not the reaction the council had expected. They had anticipated fear, hesitation, perhaps even some clever attempt at diplomacy. But humans had done something different. They had spoken with clarity, courage, and unwavering confidence. The humans themselves felt the tension, but they did not waver. Every crew member understood that this was the moment their species had been waiting for. They were no longer just representatives. They were the voice of all humanity, carrying the legacy of survival, creativity, and determination into the stars. They felt pride, a deep and unshakable pride, knowing that in this instant, humans had made a mark that no one could ignore. Murmurs spread across the chamber. Some of the alien delegates communicated in rapid pulses of light, others through low vibrations in the air, and some used forms of motion that were completely alien to humans. The word had sparked something unexpected: confusion, debate, and even a subtle sense of awe. The humans realized that their single-word answer had done more than communicate defiance. It had forced the council and the other delegates to reconsider everything they thought they knew about Earth and its people. The council leader spoke again, its tone more controlled, but still layered with surprise. You have spoken a word that none of us anticipated. It is unusual. Your species has challenged expectations in a way few others have. Explain yourselves, humans. What is the meaning behind this word? Why do you choose to speak in this way? The human leader met its gaze steadily, unflinching. This word represents who we are. It represents centuries of survival, of learning, and of refusing to be subdued. It is not a threat, nor a declaration of war. It is clarity, honesty, and strength. We do not bow out of fear. We do not give in to intimidation. We face challenges because it is who we are. If you wish to understand humanity, this word is our message. We exist, we endure, and we will continue to rise. The council and delegates were silent again, absorbing the statement. Some seemed almost perplexed, trying to grasp the depth behind such a simple word. Others began to whisper among themselves, their forms and colors shifting in patterns humans could barely interpret. The atmosphere had changed completely. Humans were no longer tiny, inexperienced newcomers. They were a species to be reckoned with, one that would be watched carefully and with respect from this moment forward. In the human delegation, there was quiet celebration, but it was tempered with awareness. They knew the word had made an impact, but the galaxy was vast and there was much work ahead. They had not won anything yet, nor had they conquered anything. What they had achieved was recognition that humans could assert themselves with dignity and courage. That alone was an extraordinary accomplishment. The council leader finally responded after a long pause. You have spoken, and we hear you. Your word carries, meaning we have not seen in centuries of observing new civilizations. It challenges what we expected. We will need time to consider the implications. Your species has claimed its voice. We will observe your actions, and from these actions, we will learn if your word holds true. Even as the humans processed the council's words, they felt a sense of relief mixed with satisfaction. They had achieved something incredible, not by fighting or bargaining, but by being themselves, speaking with honesty, and showing courage. The chamber was no longer a place of intimidation. It had become a space where humans had forced the galaxy to pause, reflect, and recognized them not as the meeting ended. The human delegation returned to their ship, exhausted but exhilarated. They walked through the corridors quietly, reflecting on what had just occurred. Every human felt the weight of the moment. They had not simply answered a question. They had reshaped perception, created a ripple that would travel across systems and generations. Humanity had shown that even a species new to the galaxy could command attention, respect and curiosity through clarity, courage and identity. That night, as the crew gathered in the observation deck, they looked out at the stars and the council stations, shimmering like enormous constellations of light and energy. They realized the galaxy was far larger and more complex than they had imagined. Yet, in that vastness, humans had found their voice. They had demonstrated that no matter how small or young a species might seem, its courage and clarity could leave an indelible mark. They also understood something deeper. This was only the beginning. The word they had spoken had opened doors, shifted expectations, and challenged centuries of assumptions. But it would be their actions moving forward that truly defined them. Words could inspire, but deeds would prove their worth. Humans would need to act with wisdom, courage, and integrity if they were to maintain the impression they had created. As the night stretched on, the delegation talked quietly among themselves. They shared thoughts, reflections, and observations. They realized that humanity's one-word answer was more than a message to the council. It was a message to themselves. It was a reminder of what humans could achieve when they acted with honesty, courage, and unity. It was a promise that no matter how vast the universe, humanity would face it with clarity, strength, and resilience. The stars outside seemed brighter than ever before. Each one was a reminder of the journey ahead, of the countless civilizations yet to meet, the challenges yet to face, and the opportunities waiting to be seized. Humanity had spoken. The galaxy had listened. And in that moment, humans knew something profound. They were no longer just a species from a small, distant planet. They were a presence in the galaxy, a force that could shape perception and history simply by being true to themselves. The crew settled for the night, tired but filled with quiet pride. The council's reaction had been more measured than expected, but humans knew that the echo of their word would travel far. Across countless systems, in countless minds, the single word would be remembered as the moment a young species declared itself with clarity and courage. Humanity had arrived. They had claimed their voice. And from this moment, nothing would be quite the same again. After humanity's one-word response, the ripple through the galaxy was immediate. The Council, which had expected compliance or hesitation, now faced a species that had acted with clarity, courage, and independence. For centuries, civilizations had responded to the Council's expectations in predictable ways: submission, negotiation, or flattery. Humans, however, had done something entirely different. They had spoken with honesty and self-respect, and that had shocked the galaxy. News of the encounter spread quickly, faster than the humans could have imagined. Other civilizations began to discuss humanity among themselves. Ships in distant systems transmitted messages, and delegates in other councils paused to review the reports. The humans had become the topic of conversation across star systems. Many aliens were curious, some amused, some skeptical, and a few cautiously impressed. Across the galaxy, whispers circulated. A new species had arrived, and it had the courage to speak for itself. Within the council chamber, the reaction was palpable. Delegates shifted in their seats, exchanged subtle signals, and whispered in alien tongues. Some had never seen a species respond to the council's authority in this way. Most newcomers offered tribute without hesitation, understanding that compliance was the safest path. Humans, however, had chosen a different route, one that commanded attention. Even the council leader, who had seen countless civilizations over millennia, paused to reassess. The humans had forced the Council to reconsider its assumptions. On Earth, the human delegation continued their work, aware that their actions were being watched not only by the Council, but by the entire galaxy. They were mindful of every communication, every interaction, and every decision. The delegation understood that their one-word answer had created a new reality. Humans were no longer merely observers in the galaxy. They were participants, and their every move would be analyzed for meaning. Intent and character. The aliens' curiosity soon led to cautious invitations for dialogue. Some civilizations wanted to understand the humans' perspective, their history, and their motivations. They were fascinated by the courage and clarity the humans had demonstrated. For the first time, humans realized that their actions could shape how the galaxy viewed them, not just as newcomers, but as a species with values, resilience, and potential. The Council itself began a series of internal discussions. While some members were initially annoyed by humanity's refusal to comply with the tribute demand, others saw an opportunity. A species that acted with such clarity and self-respect could be a valuable partner in the galaxy. The Council had always relied on predictable behavior from younger civilizations, but humans were unpredictable, and that unpredictability held power. They could not be ignored. Meanwhile, the human delegation worked tirelessly to maintain the momentum. They continued to study alien customs, languages, and technology. They sent messages of peace and cooperation to other species, carefully choosing words that emphasized humanity's values of respect, curiosity, and collaboration. They knew that actions mattered as much as words, and every step they took reinforced the image of humans as capable, intelligent, and principled. Some alien species approached the humans cautiously, offering tentative alliances or exchanges. They were intrigued by a species that could stand firmly without aggression, and they wanted to learn more. These interactions were delicate. Humans had to balance caution with openness, demonstrating that they were trustworthy but not easily manipulated. Each exchange was an opportunity to reinforce the identity they had claimed with their one-word answer. Back in the Council chamber, the leader began to take a different approach. Instead of demanding tribute or obedience, the Council started testing humanity in subtler ways. They asked questions about ethics, decision-making, and problem-solving. They observed human reactions carefully, measuring not just intelligence or strategy, but the values behind their choices. Humans responded with honesty and thoughtfulness, showing that they were not only capable of understanding the galaxy, but also of contributing meaningfully. The galaxy began to recognize that humans were different. They were not the most advanced in technology, nor the most powerful in numbers, but they possessed a unique combination of courage, adaptability, and creativity. Their ability to act with integrity, even in the face of pressure, set them apart. Delegates from other civilizations began to share their observations, noting that humans could be trusted to act independently and responsibly. Over time, the perception of humanity shifted from novelty to respect. Humans were no longer just a species to watch, they were a species to engage with seriously. Requests for meetings, collaborations, and discussions increased. Scientists, diplomats, and explorers from across the galaxy sought to understand the humans' approach to problem-solving, communication, and ethics. Even some of the more skeptical members of the Council began to acknowledge that the one-word answer had revealed a depth of character and strength that few knew. Civilizations possessed. Human delegation remained humble throughout this attention. They knew that respect was not given lightly, and that they had to earn it continuously. Every interaction, every response, and every choice mattered. They understood that the galaxy was vast, filled with unknown challenges and civilizations with their own agendas. Yet they faced this complexity with confidence, knowing that their identity, the clarity, courage, and resilience they had displayed would guide them. Meanwhile, reports of humanity's impact began to reach other systems, even beyond the Council's direct influence. Traders, explorers, and independent civilizations all learned of the humans' response. Across star systems, the story spread. A small, distant species had spoken a single word and changed the way the galaxy viewed them. Some civilizations expressed admiration, others curiosity, and a few concern, wondering what humans might do next. The humans had become a symbol of potential, capable of reshaping perceptions with both words and actions. Within the human delegation, there was a sense of responsibility. They had ignited curiosity, gained attention, and earned a degree of respect. But they knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy was vast, with countless unknowns. They would need to act consistently, demonstrate their principles through deeds, and continue building relationships based on trust and integrity. The delegation recognized that their one-word answer was a starting point, a signal that humanity could not be ignored, and that it was now up to them to shape their place in the galaxy responsibly. As time passed, the humans began to engage in collaborative projects with other civilizations. They shared knowledge of their planet, their science, and their culture, while learning from the experiences of older species. These exchanges deepened mutual understanding and strengthened humanity's position in the galaxy. Other civilizations began to recognize that humans could be reliable partners, innovative, adaptable, and principled. The Council observed these developments carefully. Humans were proving their point, not through aggression or submission, but through thoughtful engagement, courage, and consistency. The one-word answer had been more than just a statement. It had been a declaration of intent and capability. Humans were showing that they could operate with dignity, face challenges without fear, and contribute meaningfully to interstellar society. The ripple effect of humanity's actions spread further. Across star systems, civilizations began to reconsider how they approached new species. Some had relied on intimidation or assumed superiority, but humans had demonstrated that respect, courage, and clarity could shift perceptions in ways force could not. The galaxy was learning that strength was not always measured in numbers, firepower, or centuries of dominance, but in the ability to act with integrity and presence. As the humans looked out at the stars from their ship, they realized how far they had come. They had faced the Council, spoken their truth, and changed the way the galaxy perceived them. They had survived scrutiny, uncertainty, and expectation, and had emerged recognized, not as mere newcomers, but as a species capable of standing on its own. They understood that the universe was vast, and challenges would continue to come. But they also understood that humanity's courage, clarity, and resilience would guide them through what lay ahead. The human delegation took a moment to reflect. They were aware of the responsibilities they now carried, and of the attention they had drawn. They had not sought recognition or status, only the ability to exist and act as themselves. Yet in claiming that right, they had earned something extraordinary. A place in the galaxy, not given lightly, but earned through integrity and courage. The crew discussed what the next steps might be. They planned to continue their peaceful engagement with other civilizations, offering knowledge, support, and collaboration. They also prepared for challenges, knowing that not all species would react positively to humans' independence. But they faced the future with confidence, grounded in the knowledge that they had already proven something essential, that humanity could act with courage, clarity, and dignity in the vastness of the galaxy. Across the galaxy, stories of the humans' one-word answer continued to spread. They became an example of how a species could assert itself without aggression, earning attention and respect by being true to its identity. Delegates, scientists, and explorers discussed home. The galaxy had changed. Humanity's one-word answer to the Council's demand had echoed across systems, reverberating in every corner of the galaxy. It had started as a simple statement, but had grown into a symbol of courage, clarity, and identity. The human delegation now realized the full extent of their actions. They had not only represented their species, they had reshaped perceptions of what humans were capable of. The recognition they had earned was no longer fragile or tentative. It had taken root. The human delegation prepared for yet another meeting with the council, but this time the atmosphere was different. There was no tension, no underlying threat. Instead, there was curiosity, a cautious respect. The council, which had long seen itself as the ultimate authority in the galaxy, was now observing humans as equals, at least in the sense of acknowledging their voice. The delegation felt a sense of responsibility heavier than any they had carried before. They were not only acting for themselves, they were acting for the entire species. When they entered the chamber, the council's leader acknowledged them with a subtle ripple of its luminous form. "Humans," it said, its tone measured, "your presence here has not only surprised us, it has given us cause to reconsider our expectations of new civilizations. Your word, your clarity, and your courage have made an impression unlike any we have seen in centuries. Explain to us how you envision your place in the galaxy and how you intend to uphold the values you have spoken of." The human leader stepped forward, calm and deliberate. She knew this was not merely a discussion, it was a defining moment. "We do not seek to dominate or to be dominated," she began. "Humanity's place in the galaxy is not to be determined by fear or force, but by understanding, respect, and cooperation. Our history has taught us that survival is not only about strength, but about adaptability, compassion, and ingenuity. We will act in ways that are consistent with these values. We will engage, explore, and contribute while respecting the autonomy of others." Our one-word answer was only the beginning. Our actions will prove the truth of our words. The council's members studied the humans closely. Their reactions were subtle shifts of color, variations in glow, slight ripples in motion, but the human delegation was trained to perceive these cues. They knew the council was weighing their words, testing their sincerity, and trying to discern the depth of humanity's character. In that moment, the humans felt a profound clarity. They were not just negotiating. They were defining what it meant to be human in the galaxy. The chamber was quiet, filled with anticipation. Then, the council leader spoke again, its tone almost thoughtful. "You have demonstrated courage, clarity, and honesty. You have challenged assumptions, and in doing so, you have proven that your species cannot be dismissed lightly. The galaxy is vast, and its challenges are many. Yet, it is clear that humans have a unique approach, one that could benefit both your species and others. From this moment forward, the Council will observe and engage with humanity not as novices, but as participants worthy of recognition." The human delegation absorbed the weight of these words. Recognition from the Council was not merely symbolic. It was an acknowledgement of humanity's potential and responsibility. It meant that their species would have a voice in decisions, a seat at discussions that could shape the future of countless civilizations. It was a testament to the power of courage, clarity, and integrity in the days that followed. The ripple effects continued to spread. Civilizations across the galaxy began to seek dialogue with humans. Some were eager to form alliances, others curious to learn from a species that had displayed such clear principles. The humans responded with care, balancing openness with caution. They were mindful of the lessons learned on Earth. Trust had to be earned, respect had to be mutual, and actions always carried consequences. Humanity began to take part in interstellar projects, sharing scientific knowledge, exploring new star systems, and contributing to collaborative research. Other species were impressed by the humans' ingenuity and adaptability. Humans were not the most technologically advanced, nor the oldest civilization, but they possessed something rare: creativity, resilience, and an unwavering sense of identity. That combination made them unpredictable, not in a chaotic way, but in a way that inspired curiosity and respect. Meanwhile, The Council observed these developments closely. Humans were proving that their one-word answer had substance. They were consistent, principled, and thoughtful. Where other civilizations might have used fear, intimidation, or submission to navigate challenges, humans used honesty, courage, and collaboration. Slowly, the galaxy began to see that strength did not always lie in power alone. Sometimes it lay in the ability to act with integrity and clarity. As humans traveled from system to system, they encountered other species who had been cautious or skeptical. Many expected arrogance or recklessness, assuming a new species might overreach. Instead, they found a species that listened, learned, and acted deliberately. The humans' reputation grew. Word of their one-word answer and the courage it represented spread far beyond the Council's immediate influence. They became known as a species that could stand firmly, speak clearly, and act with principle. Back aboard their ship, the human delegation reflected on the journey. They understood that they had not only survived encounters with advanced civilizations, but had also created a foundation for meaningful engagement. They had demonstrated that humanity's values courage, clarity, adaptability, and respect were not abstract ideals, but guiding principles that could navigate even the most complex challenges. The galaxy, in turn, began to adjust. Delegations and councils across systems began to rethink how they approached new species. They had long relied on predictable patterns, intimidation, expectations of compliance, and hierarchical control. Humans had shown a new model: respect for others, strength in clarity, and influence through integrity. Slowly, the galaxy was learning that cooperation and understanding could be as powerful as dominance and coercion. Yet humanity did not grow complacent. The delegation knew that recognition and respect had to be maintained. Every interaction, every decision, and every act would reflect on their species. They continued to prepare for the unexpected, aware that the galaxy was vast and full of unknowns. Their one-word answer had opened doors, but it was their actions that would determine their lasting place in the universe. Not as time passed, humans began to influence interstellar culture in subtle ways. Their approach to diplomacy, their method of problem-solving, and their respect for individual and collective integrity became topics of discussion. Other species observed, learned, and sometimes even adapted aspects of human behavior. The humans' courage to speak clearly, to act honestly, and to maintain their identity resonated across systems, inspiring curiosity and fostering alliances. The Council, once seen as the ultimate authority, now regarded humanity with careful respect. They continued to observe, but with a new understanding. Humans could not be underestimated. They had entered the galaxy with nothing but clarity, courage, and integrity, and those qualities had earned them recognition. Humans had demonstrated that influence was not solely a matter of power, technology, or numbers, but of principle and presence. On a quiet night aboard their ship, as stars stretched endlessly in every direction, the human delegation reflected on their journey. They had begun as a species unknown beyond their home planet. Now, they had carved a place in the galaxy, not through aggression or compromise, but through honesty, courage, and clarity. They understood that the journey ahead would hold challenges, but they faced it with confidence. Humanity's identity had been established, and their principles would guide them. Through whatever the universe could present, the humans looked out at the stars and felt a deep sense of connection. They were aware of the vastness around them, but they also understood their own significance. They had entered the galaxy and spoken a word that resonated far beyond the chamber of the Council. That word had become a promise, a marker of identity, and a signal to all civilizations. Humans were present, principled, and ready. And so, humanity began a new chapter in the galaxy, one of exploration, dialogue, and influence, not by force, but by integrity. The one-word answer had sparked curiosity and respect, but it was humanity's ongoing actions, guided by their values, that would ensure their place among the stars. They had faced the unknown, asserted themselves with courage, and shown that even a species new to the galaxy could shape perception, earn respect, and build a legacy in the vastness of space. Humans had found their voice. In the complexity of civilizations, they had found their path. And in the unending challenge of the galaxy, they had found their strength. Humanity had arrived, not as a footnote, but as a presence that could not be ignored. The stars above were no longer just lights in the night. They were a reminder of the journey ahead, the challenges yet to come, and the endless possibilities that lay before a species brave enough to speak clearly and act with integrity. As the human delegation settled into their quarters that night, there was a quiet satisfaction. They had faced a test unlike any other, spoken with courage and clarity, and changed the way the galaxy perceived them. But more than that, they had proven to themselves what humans could achieve when they reme,